creature that cannot fly, yet has pierced the firmament. Does not know how to swim, yet has crossed the great mists. Its body is fragile, yet it endures the longest. The tiny Homo sapiens, with boundless thirst. From their origin in the African wilderness, the first steps initiated the greatest adventure history has ever witnessed. This was not merely the law of evolution, but a tremendous leap that changed the entire fate of humanity. So, in that journey, how did humans conquer the world? Homo sapiens. Initially, Homo sapiens lived only in Africa, blending into the forest and grassland environments with a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. However, that stability did not last long. Only after shifting to harsher cycles, prolonged droughts forced groups to abandon their dwellings in search of life. Without a set route, they moved naturally, following the tracks of animal herds, underground water sources, or any land with vegetation. No one knew those first steps would begin the greatest journey in human history. Previously, scientists believed there was only a single wave of Homo sapiens leaving Africa, laying the foundation for civilizations. But a series of archaeological evidence and modern genetic data paint a completely different picture. Spanning hundreds of thousands of years, humans left Africa many times. However, not every adventure led to a favorable outcome. Some journeys ended early in silence, leaving only faint traces in evolutionary history. Among countless efforts to save the Dark Continent, 3 migration waves are considered turning points, completely altering the human landscape. The first pioneering wave followed the southern coast of Asia to Australia around 50,000 years ago. But how could they reach such a distant land? Scientists believe it was the result of a perilous series of sea voyages across small islands in the Southeast Asian region. Notably, the final leg is thought to be from Rodi Island in Timor to the northern Kimberley region. As one of the longest migration routes of that era, it required clear planning and tight organization. On simple rafts without sails, they waited with hundreds of people, drifting for 4 to 7 days across the ocean. So why didn't Homo sapiens head west to Europe at the same time? In fact, there were earlier attempts, but all were unsuccessful. The reason is that Neanderthals had already settled in Europe over 200,000 years ago. Known as the strongest hunter due to favorable living conditions and abundant resources. And so, in the survival struggle between the two human species, our ancestors failed and were forced to turn back east. Around 45,000 years ago, they began migrating into southern China, following the tracks of herbivorous herds. However, expansion into the northern part of the country was delayed by vast, harsh river valleys. Simultaneously, migration waves also reached the Korean peninsula and the Japanese archipelago around 35,000 years ago. The second major wave occurred 50,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens left the Indian subcontinent, headed west through the Middle East and Turkey, and set foot in Europe around 45,000 years ago. Unlike previous attempts, this time they succeeded in overcoming geographical barriers and settling, even though Neanderthals were still present. The third great migration was the journey to conquer the Americas, the new continent located east of Cyprus. Around 23,000 years ago, modern humans began crossing the continent via a vast landmass called Beringia. At that time, sea levels dropped by over 130 meters, revealing a land corridor between Siberia and Alaska. Besides traveling by land, our ancestors may have followed the waves by boat along the western coast of the northern continent. By around 16,000 years ago, they began moving south, crossing this land to Central America and reaching the southern tip of the continent. The rapid expansion from Canada to Argentina within just 2 millennia may have been due to accumulated seafaring experience and the use of watercraft from long ago. By around 12,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had spread across the Americas, while other groups also headed toward the northern extremes of Europe and Asia. They followed the footprints of migrating animal herds, tracing the retreat paths of ancient ice sheets. Thanks to their remarkable adaptability, along with advances in communication, tools, and fire control, humans overcame all ecological boundaries. It was the pressure from harsh environments, the development of creative intelligence, and evolving community mechanisms that drove that great journey to the ends of the world. Following that, as Homo sapiens communities moved away from a hunter-gatherer economy and gradually formed the first post-agricultural institutions. Maritime geography became a strategic factor in connecting separated regions. In the 3rd millennium BCE, communities living around the Mediterranean basin began fully exploring maritime potential, establishing humanity's first international trade routes. Among them were the Phoenicians. Originating from a narrow strip of land on the Levantine coast, they built a dense network of colonies across the Greek islands, southern Europe, and along the West African sea route to lands that are part of the United. Not stopping there, they crossed the Red Sea to access Arabian economic centers and expanded trade to the Indian subcontinent. Around the 9th century BCE, Phoenicia rose as a commercial power, capable of competing with the mighty empires of the time. Parallel to that expansion, the Achaemenid Empire developed a maritime system heading south, along the Red Sea to access remote regions of sub-Saharan Africa. Through voyages across the Arabian Sea, they established trade relations with the land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, to acquire precious resources like gold, frankincense, myrrh, and exotic animals. In the north, cities along the Greek coast played a central role in shaping new intercontinental trade routes. Utilizing advanced shipbuilding techniques, Mediterranean merchants expanded sea routes to Persia, India, and the Arabian coastal region. Trade not only brought material wealth, but also helped Egypt access astronomical, geographical, and medical knowledge from distant Eastern civilizations. By the 4th century BCE, a major geopolitical shift occurred when Alexander the Great launched a military campaign beyond the borders. He led his army to conquer Persia, imposed rule over Egypt, and expanded his influence as far as the Indus River, establishing an unprecedented transcontinental empire in the ancient world. However, more important than military victory was the cultural fusion between East and West, originating from intellectual centers like Alexandria. This port city not only served as a commercial hub but also housed the largest library of books and documents of its time. Fleets carrying goods from India such as spices, silk, precious stones, and porcelain flowed into the Mediterranean, continuing to form a multi-layered exchange network with it. Meanwhile, the far eastern continent of Asia also witnessed breakthrough developments with the powerful rise of the Chinese Empire. In the 2nd century BCE, during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, the explorer Zhang Qian was sent to seek alliances against the northern nomadic tribe. This diplomatic mission inadvertently opened a transcontinental trade route thousands of kilometers long, later known as the Silk Road. It connected East Asia's center with prosperous cities in Central Asia, Persia, the Indian subcontinent, and Mediterranean ports. From here, distinctive Chinese products like silk, tea, paper, and porcelain began circulating in major markets, from Samarkand to Baghdad, and even as far as Rome. In return, the East received rare products such as pearls, incense, war horses, and advanced metallurgical techniques from the West. During this period, many empires expanded their influence through force and trade. An isolated island community opened territories with knowledge and exceptional endurance, Polynesia. Without compasses, maps, or positioning devices, they accurately navigated the Pacific by observing celestial bodies, analyzing ocean currents, and recognizing wave patterns. From the Marquesas Islands, they traveled over 4,000 kilometers to settle in Hawaii, despite using only wooden outrigger canoes. The journey continued to open routes to Easter Island in the east and New Zealand in the south, creating a settlement network covering almost the entire world's largest ocean region. Even, according to new research from Stanford University, ancient Polynesians may have crossed the Pacific to reach what is now Colombia, before Europeans knew of the Americas' existence. Following that, human history entered an era of relentless expansion, where people continued to redefine territorial limits through various means. These could be complex global trade routes, but also religious expansion and conquest through war. Humanity's journeys to expand the world did not stop there. Since the latter half of the Middle Ages, a global geographical discovery movement began, known as the Age of Discovery. It occurred as Europe began to reach beyond its geographical limits, expanding economic, political, and maritime horizons, lasting until the dawn of the modern era. Before this wave erupted on a large scale, many isolated exploratory journeys were conducted and recorded in detail. In the 12th century, Arab geographer Muhammad al-Idrisi completed an incredibly detailed world map in Sicily, based on materials from Muslim merchants and adventurous sailors. However, due to a lack of information about sub-Saharan Africa, the southern part of the continent was not included. Nevertheless, the work became an important reference and guide for medieval geography. In the 13th century, Eurasian caravans began using the postal relay system along the Silk Road. Among them, many Italians, Russian merchants, and Catholic priests risked crossing the Middle East, entering Chinese territory. By the early 14th century, the scholar Ibn Battuta left Morocco, traveling throughout Islamic regions, reaching Central Asia, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. At this time, maritime trade in the Indian Ocean reached its peak of development. Merchant ships from China, Gujarat, and the Arabian Peninsula frequently docked at ports along the African coast to exchange goods, creating a vast connection network. However, after the Mongol emperor passed away, the Chinese court unexpectedly abandoned its maritime policy, causing trade activity. The coastal kingdoms of Portugal and Spain chose the opposite direction, venturing into the open sea. With support from the royal family, they organized a series of voyages along the West African coast, gradually redrawing the. In 1488, Bartholomew Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope and opened a route connecting Europe with Asia without needing the Middle East. A decade later, Vasco da Gama completed the journey around Africa to reach the Indian coast, establishing a direct trade link between the two continents. The next step saw the Portuguese entering South Asian lands, occupying Brazil, and expanding routes toward Japan and through the Strait of Malacca. Meanwhile, Spain turned its attention west. In 1492, Christopher Columbus set sail to find a direct route to Asia and accidentally crossed the ocean. After leaving Palos Port, the expedition reached the Caribbean and set foot on a chain of islands they mistakenly thought were part of it. The discovery of an unknown continent shocked Europe. Soon after, Spanish fleets continuously crossed the ocean to explore the interior of the New World. Simultaneously, explorer John Cabot, serving the English crown, reached Newfoundland in 1497, marking the first Anglo presence in America. In 1513, Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed the Isthmus of Panama and discovered the vast ocean on the other side, the Pacific. That discovery made empires realize the Earth was larger than they had imagined. 7 years later, Ferdinand Magellan led a fleet of 5 ships, embarking on the first circumnavigation of the world in human history. From the mid-16th century, the trend of exploration no longer focused solely on finding new sea routes but shifted to forms of conquest. Spanish and Portuguese forces successively defeated indigenous empires in South America, imposing colonial systems on local populations. At the same time, the Netherlands, England, and France also began establishing plantations throughout the Caribbean and North America. Not only that, the Russian Empire expanded into Siberia, extending its territory to the Pacific coast. Simultaneously, Europeans discovered Oceania, notably the journeys to Australia and New Zealand by Dutch and English explorers. Thus, the world map gradually perfected over the decades. However, behind the glory is a series of bloody massacres. Indigenous peoples in the New World were devastated by epidemics, conflicts, and forced labor. Many civilizations were wiped out, leaving cultural voids. The transatlantic slave trade became a prolonged scourge lasting centuries. Therefore, these journeys awakened a global consciousness. For the first time, humanity realized that the Earth is a continuous whole, traversable, connectable, and measurable. By now, when the last lands were colored on the map, and the icy poles had been marked by human footprints, humanity's journey of conquest seemed to be reaching its end. Yet, curiosity continued to rise above the frontiers beneath our feet, within the Earth, and in the depths of the ocean. In 1960, explorers Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh boarded the bathyscaphe Trieste to descend into the heart of the Pacific Ocean. With every year they descended, pressure increased layer by layer. Any small mistake could instantly shatter the entire vessel. At a depth of nearly 11,000 meters in the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on the planet, they not only faced darkness and absolute silence, but also unexpectedly encountered the life of bioluminescent plankton. That was the first time humans reached the deepest point of the ocean. Subsequently, mysterious doors gradually opened. Explorers ventured far from sunlight into the Amazon rainforest, where the dense canopy prevented light from reaching the ground. They entered giant caves never before recorded, to converse with millions of years of geological history, or encounter unknown creatures. Minds expanded to a new frontier of the microworld, where billions of organisms invisible to the naked eye were discovered. In hydrothermal vents under the sea, in ancient sedimentary layers, or deep beneath the continental surface, entirely different ecosystems existed. Without light, without relying on oxygen, these organisms survived through strange energy conversion processes, as if they came from another planet. Some forms of existence would even help us understand the origins of life on Earth, or provide hope for the search for extraterrestrial life. From the very beginning, some people observed and predicted celestial objects to create patterns for practical use in their lives, such as calendars and navigation. Then, as technology began to develop, on October 4, 1957, humans first entered the era of space conquest with Russia's artificial satellite Sputnik 1. By 1969, aboard the Apollo spacecraft, explorer Neil Armstrong set foot on the lunar surface, taking a giant leap that changed the entire future of humanity. The flight was not only a personal success for the Soviet Union at the time, but also brought joy and excitement to people all over the world. Age-old dream of escaping Earth. Since then, hundreds of people from different countries have also participated in missions beyond orbit. Today, the International Space Station, ISS, continuously hosts multinational crews, with representatives from Russia, the United States, Europe, and Japan working. In addition to professional explorers, space also welcomes tourists, those who dare to leave Earth to satisfy their curiosity and personal dreams. Even for veteran astronauts, Earth's orbit is no longer an unfamiliar land but has become a workplace where they test life support systems, analyze physical phenomena, and explore medical limits in microgravity conditions. All these efforts reflect the remarkable progress of the space industry, not only technically but also in terms of long-term strategic vision in conquering the vast space beyond Earth. Once again, space technology has been and is present in every field, from education to healthcare, from defense to the economy, contributing to shaping the future of modern civilizations. To this day, humanity's adventurous spirit has not yet reached its conclusion. Since we were wandering creatures on the African savanna, we have learned to cross mountains and navigate by the stars. Each generation continues that journey, from primitive stone tools to space stations floating weightlessly in the void. But when we have set foot on every continent, conquered Mount Everest, and flown past the moon, what remains to be sought? Perhaps the answer does not lie in maps or coordinates. It lies in the unquenchable thirst within humanity. The passion for exploring the unknown transcends all apparent limits. Because the final thing to conquer may not be a distant planet, but the very nature of existence. Who are we? Where do we come from? And how far can we go?